As you can see at the top of your screen. And for some reaction, we're turning to New Jersey Congressman Scott Garrett. He's a member of the Finance Committee, and he joins us here in Becky's seat. Great to have you, Congressman.
It's good to be in her seat.
I guess general take this morning is that this had to be done, distasteful as it is. Is that the common view in Washington?
I'll be leaving right after the show to go back to Washington to see if that's a common view. That's certainly not my view. I think what you'll see right now is a lot of knee-jerk optimism, as some would say, after this, just as he had after Bear Stearns. Everybody's all excited. We're doing the right thing. Everything's go up. A week from now, 2 weeks from now, reality will begin to set in to say, what exactly did Congress do? First of all, when he passed this bill,
right.
I opposed this bill. And what did Treasury do now? And why did they do it now?
What was the alternative then?
Well, one question is to why. Remember, when this Treasury Secretary came to a GOP conference back a couple months ago and talked about this, he basically assured us that
he wasn't going to need to use the bazooka.
Thank you very much.
Right.
That's exactly it. And that's why he got support from so many people on the other side of the aisle and our side of the aisle. Said this is never going to have to happen because all we need to do is back them up like this with this implied guarantee and make it implicit like this. This isn't going to happen. So a lot of people voted that way. And I said no. I said this is going to happen. And sure enough, how it is. You know, this does absolutely nothing as far as changing the fundamentals of the problems in the market, does absolutely nothing as far as changing the fundamentals of the problems that the banks are having right now. And as I say, a few weeks from now, we'll be looking back and saying, where are we going to be a year and a half from now?
But, you know, the argument that Bear Stearns represented systemic risk, that the entire global financial system could take a hit if Bear Stearns were left to go under, maybe that was a stretch. It's not a stretch for Fannie and Freddie.
It's not a stretch for Fannie and Freddie if they collapse. But, you know, just the same point as far as when he said 2 months ago, don't worry, this doesn't have to happen. Remember, back at that point, some of us asked the question, we're putting in this new legislation. Did Fannie or Freddie come to you and ask you to give them the new legislation? And their answer was, no, they didn't. So the same question should be put to the Secretary right now. Did Fannie and Freddie come to you right now and say that they needed this to happen right now? I mean, clearly the CEOs of both companies, they walk away from this in a pretty positive picture.
They're both whistling past the
graveyard.
graveyard.
But this is bigger than those two men, right?
But exactly. But the taxpayer, once again, is going to be put on the hook. And for how much? For over $200 billion potentially that's going to be thrown into this. And then for another $320+ billion for the next 16 months. The question is that you should be asking the Secretary is, where are we going to be a year and a half from now? Because what exactly do we get out of this except $1 billion up front right now, 80% into a company that, for all intents and purposes, won't have any value 18 months from now? So those are some of the questions I would have if I'd be here with the Secretary.
I think what he might say is what we're getting is no financial collapse around the globe.
Right.
We don't have central bankers walking away from our paper on a mass scale. That's a big deal.
We won't lose it. The 200, that's a worst case scenario. The 100, they're talking 25 billion estimated for the taxpayer, and on a $5 trillion. No. Yeah, 25 is the number.
They're guaranteeing into each one, both Fannie and Freddie, $100 billion, and that's $200 billion.
They'd have to, all the mortgages would have to go to zero, right?
No, not for that number to happen. That would just be the banking. For all the mortgages to go to zero, then you would have to look at the total of $6 trillion. But the upfront money would be, I mean, not the upfront money, but the potential for it is the 200 right now. And they're going to allow both of the GSEs to write an additional 320 over this time, over the next 16 months. So that basically is saying throwing good money after bad.
It's impossible for this to turn out like Chrysler, where the government makes money.
Impossible. Never say it can't happen. I remain on this, the optimist, that everything is going to work out.
You don't sound very optimistic.
Well, I'm not optimistic in as much as, you know, the Secretary came and said one thing and some of us tried to fight it. You know, one of the good things out of this, though, I'm happy about, is that they are able to end the lobbying on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
I always say, follow the money.
Right.
2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I went and say, let's put this limitation on them right then. And, you know, nobody wanted to do that because, hey, so much money comes out of these GSEs as far as lobbying on Capitol Hill. But you follow the money and you see where the problem brought us to.
What do you say to constituents who would argue, why did you vote against this when I'm trying to get a home and a mortgage is just out of reach and potentially now in reach because of this very move?
Well, because at the end of the day, one of the other commentators you had, you said, really, we have to reach bottom in the housing market before you begin to go up. And what does this really do? It doesn't really allow us to reach the optimal bottom on the marketplace and get up. Basically, what it does is sort of spreads out getting to that bottom, maybe over the next year and a half. Maybe it brings us down about a point at this point. I'll be optimistic that it does and brings it down, what have you.
Complete financial collapse would get us to the bottom pretty quickly. But
again, no one was saying that your previous commentators were saying that the trading was still out there. It's sort of fudgy. It's not really that great.
Yeah.
The spreads were going a little bit wrong, but that wasn't really that great. But you have to ask the question, was there anything that happened last week that really changed?
But the housing prices don't have to go down 25% necessarily if people can get a mortgage. It'd be nice to try and stem the decline and not go to the worst case scenario, just to bounce from a bottom.
And that's why we have to begin to look at some other alternatives in the system as far as being able to get to that point. Because as I and other commentators have already said, this doesn't change anything as far as the banking situation. Those other fundamentals really need to be addressed to be able to get us to the point where banks and other lenders are able to be back in the marketplace.
It's good to have you. Thanks, Congressman.
I appreciate
Good to have you.
the chance.
Congressman
Thanks
Scott Garrett. When we come right back in about 10 minutes, the Treasury Secretary, Hank Paulson, is here live. He's going to talk about Fannie and Freddie. We're back in just a moment.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC, first in business worldwide.
Beep. Hey, Mary's phone. Mary doesn't have AT&T, which means we've got no bars here in this podunk little town we just moved to. So thanks for the call about how Michael Phelps is right down the street, signing autographs, taking pictures, telling hilarious stories about how much he loves Chinese food. Yeah, we're not going to get that message. One day we'll look back at this and laugh. Or cry!
For the best coverage, switch to AT&T. More bars in more places.
Hi, welcome to Progressive.com. How can I help you?
Well, I haven't shopped for car insurance in a while.
And you're worried that you've been paying too much, right?
Yeah. So how can I know I'm getting a good deal?
We can compare your Progressive Direct rate with other top companies.
Wow. Seriously?
Yeah. Look at the deal we just got him.
That's a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, or a big tricked out name tag.
Making sure you get a great deal. Now that's Progressive. Call or click